Welcome into another edition of the Royals Rundown podcast presented by Royals Review. I am Jacob Milham, joined by the one and only Jeremy Hakayas Greco. Jeremy, happy hump day and happy possible sweep day for the Kansas City Royals.
I don't think that's how Happy Sweep Day works, Jacob.
Oh, yeah, sorry. It's only happy when you are doing the sweeping, not getting
Yeah,
swept. That's right. That's right. We're recording this a couple hours before first pitch where the
at least
Royals will
before it's
try to.
scheduled. It looks
Yeah,
pretty nasty out there, so
really does it?
yeah,
Oh,
one of our
no.
fellow Royals review writers posted in the Slack a picture. It looks messy. I don't know, maybe it's just it was raining all day and it'll clear up by game time, but
Hopefully so. Hopefully they powered through that rain on what was it, Monday?
yeah, they
So
sure did.
we'll see what they do tonight. If you need to know what they're doing with the rain delay or just any information going on with the game, make sure you go check out royalsreview.com for the game threads and all the game day information you can need to be a good Kansas City Royals fan. So coming up on this episode, we will run down a couple of key pitching injury updates, the Jack Caglione update from his Omaha proper debut, not down in Salt Lake City, up there in Werder Park, and plus we will be talking about a few underperforming Royals. But first, we do have to talk about the first two games of the Cincinnati Reds series. Jeremy, you and I both, well, I predicted that they would sweep the Reds.
Yes, you
You
did.
predicted that they would go 2-3. Unfortunately, both of us are wrong.
Yeah,
And
I did say that I thought they were more likely to go 1-2 than for either team to sweep.
that is true.
That was my second most likely outcome.
Yes, hopefully they do go
Yeah,
one and
fingers
two.
crossed.
Yeah. But it's been a little, well, not a little, it's been pretty frustrating for the Royals fan base, I would say, because the Royals have looked completely outmatched this series so far on both sides, or in all facets of the game, frankly. And now you have Hunter Green, one of the up and coming stars of this league, starting for the Reds tonight opposite Noah Cameron. It's going to be tough sledding for this Royals lineup that already makes things tough for themselves. I mean, how have you felt after these two losses?
So the post I made on Blue Sky last night was this Royals team is not a lot of fun to watch right now. So that's how I'm feeling. Kind of like I said, I've been saying for a while now, what matters more to me than who the Royals are facing as far as a pitcher is who the Royals are starting that night. On Monday night, we had Michael Lorenzen, who had a bad start.
Yep.
And then last night, we had a bullpen game where Evan Sisk was asked to pitch despite having thrown 2 innings the day before. And then John Schreiber was asked to escape the jam that Sisk created and could not. So it was a little bit of a, well, that's what you get when your worst starter in a bullpen game happens and you don't have an offense. It's just, but tonight we have Noah Cameron, who is, it's a big start for him, this one, and probably is his next one, to try and prove that the Royals should absolutely not demote him. He's made 3 starts. He's never given up more than 1 run in a game. If he keeps that up, you can't demote him and keep Michael Lorenzen, can you?
I don't think so, at least, especially after the showing that Lorenzen had. If you
He's had a
want to be,
couple rough starts in a row now.
yeah, it wasn't like a blip on the radar. This was something that was kind of it was progressing towards a start like this, and this is just where the wheels fell off. I don't think that the Royals can consider themselves to be a performance-based transactional squad if they demote Noah Cameron in
Yeah.
favor of keeping a guy like Michael Lorenzen. And to Lorenzen's credit, former All-Star, he's had some great peaks in his career. But at the end of the day, there was a reason why he was pushed to the bullpen for a period in the past, like 2 seasons, I think it was.
He's been kind of in and out of rotations and bullpens all throughout his career. The bullpen could absolutely use him, even as good as it's been. I do think that, and that's the thing also, is that keeping Noah Cameron in the rotation doesn't mean cutting Michael Lorenzen. It just means demoting him to the bullpen or trading him.
Yeah. And
Either of which is a perfectly valid solution.
Yeah, probably so. And you demote another right-handed reliever. You say thank you for what you did, but right now this is what we need to do to help the team win. And speaking of the team win, So I will say that we seem very far removed from that streak where the Royals went 16-2. Right?
Yeah.
You remember that? That was like late April, first week and some change of May. It was great. The Royals were surging. It was awesome. Since then, they've lost 11 of their last 16 games as of recording. They've scored 3 runs or fewer in 13 of those 16 games and aren't even averaging 3 runs a game in that spread. Like it's just atrocious stuff. And I don't blame Royals fans for not being optimistic, right, Jeremy?
I guess I don't blame anyone for being optimistic. I am getting a little tired of people who declare the game over when the Royals are down by 1 in the 4th inning. Like, they keep turning out to be right, unfortunately.
Well, that's why they react like that.
But at the same time, can we just try and believe? Can we have a little hope? I would like to just watch the baseball game and believe opportunities are there, not have everyone cursing everything so early. Like, are we here to have fun, or are we here to be right about how bad our favorite team is?
Yeah, and that's I think that's we quote David Lesky a lot on this podcast, I will say, and for very good reason. Lesky had a good social media post today where he spoke about that. And at the end of the day, if you would have told a Royals fan from 2023 that we were complaining about a winning record in the last week of May, um it's all about perspective in baseball. I get it. We had high expectations for this team after they reached the ALDS, and with this elite pitching squad that they have now, not just the rotation but the bullpen too. It does make it more frustrating because fans see what this team could be
Yeah.
if it were for one or two things. Now, fans were saying, well, this team could be this if we moved on from Hunter Renfroe and Chris Stratton. And that hasn't changed things, unfortunately. But I think Royals fans do just need to be a little bit more patient. We will get there. A lot of season ahead of us. And you know what? 29-27, not a terrible spot to be in right now. They are, believe it or not, they're still fourth in the division, just ahead of the Chicago White Sox, and the rest of the AL Central is looking really good. And the Royals just need to find their stride and figure out what they need to do to address the shortcomings right now.
Yeah, and I think they may have finally fallen out of a playoff spot, but they're right in the hunt still, even 4th in the division, because that's
Yeah.
just what the AL Central is now. And I think that's an important thing to. I'm sorry if you can hear the crying dog in the background. She's very disappointed that people are doing things and she can't be with
Oh,
them.
goodness.
But it's very important to realize that this is a team, and you also mentioned a winning May. They have a real opportunity. They just have to go 2-2 in these final 2 games to have a winning record in May.
Mhm.
Which, yeah, when you start the month on that 16-2 streak, you wish there was more. But as I've been trying to tell people, it's kind of this is a streaky team. So
Yeah.
instead of, winning 2, losing 1 over and over and over again, they're going to win 16 out of 18 and then lose 11 out of 16. That's just how it's going to be. So I forgot what the original point I was making after all those rabbit trails happened, but this is a team that's worth watching, that's competitive. I know it's frustrating. I'm also frustrated, but we got to have some long-term perspective a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, and we are getting lost in the weeds a little bit right now. And like I said, I can see both sides of the coin on this. I really can. I'm not trying to be holier than thou when I tell Royals fans to have some patience because I get frustrated too. I get frustrated when we see these base running blunders. I get frustrated when we see some of the lineup decisions. I will say that we had a survey on Royals Review come out. We had the results come out today. Let me pull that up so I say the numbers correctly. But I was pleasantly surprised to see that only 2% of respondents had a F grade for manager Mac Quachero.
I,
Where'd that go?
he's not been bad.
No, he hasn't been bad.
The lineup construction can only do so much when
Yeah.
nobody is hitting. I would argue that the biggest thing he could do to help this team right now is move Michael Garcia to clean up and move Salvi down to 5th or 6th.
Yeah.
Salvi, the last week, his WRC plus, his OPS plus is much higher. He's got an 800 OPS. that's
Okay.
almost entirely carried by 2 home runs and a double. He's still not walking. He's not striking out that much, only which is
That's not bad for him.
not as bad as you would assume it was with Salvi, but he's his OBP, his batting average are way down, and the home runs are helpful. But at this point, we got guys getting on. We got Jonathan India's getting on in May at a 350 clip. We've got Bobby Witt Jr. slumping a little for him, but he's still getting on base. We've got Vinny Pasquantino is certifiably hot right now. And then Salvador Perez comes up. He strikes out. He grounds into a double play, and Mikel Garcia is leading off the next inning in front of the bottom of the lineup instead of having an opportunity to drive in runs. It's killing them right now. But that everything else, I don't think there's anything you can change. I know people would like to see India move down to the leadoff spot. Again, 350 OBP, not hitting for power. You want him batting lower in the order where he's not going to drive guys in when he walks?
Yeah, and listen, last year that's all we wanted. We just wanted someone to get on base ahead of Bobby, and that's exactly what India's doing. It just hasn't materialized yet because this team is not producing with runners in scoring position. Like, frankly, that's the reality of it. You can go and look at, like, oh, their batting average is one of the best in MLB this month. They have, I think, the second most hits in the league this month. It doesn't matter when A, most of those hits are singles, and B, when you're not getting those hits when it matters the most. I do want to say one name, I can't remember if you said him or not, but one of the blemishes in this lineup that Royals fans are now pointing to is Michael Massey,
Yeah.
who is, I mean, his season numbers are frankly pretty atrocious. You know, it's batting average aside, a slug below 300, an OBP of 228. Like that's not what you want to see. And even though he is quote unquote hot right now, he's 8 for 25 over his last 6 games. That's just like hot for him, right? Like we would hope that someone
There's
consistently in the
there's
lineup
not a
would be
single
producing
walk
better.
in there. There's not a home run in there. It's
Yep.
empty batting average.
Right. So and as we record this, Michael Massey got scratched from the lineup with left ankle soreness, and that's not to include the back problems that we saw documented last year, and something that Massey himself has said he's had to deal with for years and just will have to continue dealing with. We've made it abundantly clear on this podcast that if a player is hurt, and even if they are performing, send him to the IL. That's what you have a 40-man roster for. Call up someone to at least just be a stopgap. They don't have to be perfect. But, Jeremy, I think that this would be the perfect opportunity for the Royals to send Michael Massey to the 10-day IL, even if it is such a minor injury.
And the thing that gets me about Michael Massey is I like the guy. Apparently he's very likable. He's won the award from the media, the local media, for most friendly person to talk to in the clubhouse for 2 years in a row. I can't remember what the award's called.
I can't remember what it is.
But he's won that 2 years in a row. Apparently he's a very nice guy. I'm sure he's working as hard as he can. You can tell he's frustrated, which is apparently something that some media members think should happen, is you should get mad when you're bad. I don't necessarily agree with that, but we saw, I talked Sunday about watching him pop that ball up and slam his bat into the ground, and I was not the only person who saw that. I saw Matthew Lamar wrote about that. I think our friend Lux talked about it on his podcast. It's an issue that this guy, like, as I said Sunday, I think he needs a mental reset. He needs, and it's not like the Royals don't have anyone who can play second base without him. They're playing Jonathan India at second base.
Right.
Even with him, they keep putting him in left field, where he's not as helpful defensively, and his bat is even worse than Kevin Biggio, who they just demoted to Omaha. Still waiting to see if he actually accepts that demotion.
Yeah,
You called up Nick Lofton, you called up Jonathan Rave, and Lofton was going to be Lofton was playing third, but Rave was going to be out of the lineup today in order to make sure Massey got more at bats. Did we call up Rave to help the offense or what?
That was the goal, and I get it. Rave hasn't. He's still searching for that first MLB hit. He had it robbed from him. He's gotten
Massey
walked.
Can't do.
Yeah, but it's pretty sad when a guy through like 2 games has the same amount of walks as Michael Massey does through like a whole month.
I know that I want to talk about Rave, but we'll finish up at Massey first.
Yeah, and to your point about keeping Massey in the lineup, his saving grace this year has been his glove. And especially in comparison to Jonathan India, who we've seen make mistake after mistake, and it cost the Royals, even if it's not an error, it has still costed the Royals in the game. That's been a saving grace, is he can go in there, he can play above average. I don't want to say gold glove, but near or above average defense there at second base. He makes a good tandem there with
Did you,
Bobby Witt Jr. and
did
Vinny
you see that flashy
Pasquantino.
play he made last night?
Yeah, that was pretty awesome, wasn't it?
Almost turned a single into a double play.
Yeah, almost.
Still got one.
Yeah, and most people would not have gotten one in that situation.
Exactly.
I know Jonathan India wouldn't. So I like Massey in the field. I really do. But frankly, there are other guys who bring more value to the team than Michael Massey does at this moment. And if he is hurting or if he is hurt, then send him to the IL. Call someone else up in his stead. Let him get a little bit of a rest. Keep it moving for the dog days of summer.
They've still got one roster spot left, and Cam Devaney is still hitting the ball very well in Omaha.
Yes, he is. And the scary thing about Cam Devaney is, because I wrote about him in the offseason about what he could bring to this Royal squad. And when I looked at his numbers from 2024, the thing that gave me pause was his expected numbers weren't great. The process wasn't great. The thing about Cam Devaney this year, though, is the expected numbers are showing that his production right now in Omaha is not a mirage. I was of the mindset that Cam Devaney was more deserving of a promotion than John Rave in comparison between the two. Both of them electric performances for Omaha, but I would have promoted Devaney over Rave myself. I think he's ready. I think he needs an opportunity. I think the Royals shouldn't make it a priority. But if they're staring at, a couple of a guy who can't really field smoothly there at second base, a guy who's slumping and is hurting, you can turn to Devaney. It just makes too much sense. And I get it. Folks are probably going to want that last coveted roster spot for Jack Caglione, who we're going to talk about later on in the podcast.
Gotta tell you, if Biggio rejects his assignment to Omaha, there's your roster spot for Caglione.
Exactly.
So there are opportunities to get that.
Yes, there are. There's still, I don't want to say fat to trim, but there are still some players to move around on this 40-man roster. All right. So let's go and talk about Rave. First impressions, Jeremy. What are we thinking?
So obviously it would be nice if he had a hit.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the quality of the plate appearances he's giving the Royals. As I mentioned, he's already taken a walk. That was during a comeback attempt. Was that in the 9th inning, I believe?
It was, yes.
Against the Reds closer? Pretty good stuff. Mm-hmm. That's a guy who is just really wants to swing the bat because he wants that first MLB hit, and he still had the patience to take the walk there.
Right.
That's something that Drew Waters didn't do that inning. That's something that Michael Massey didn't do that inning. The closer was struggling with his control the whole time. Yeah. They were racing to get somebody up in the bullpen to rescue them from their own closer. and Rave helped that process. Waters and Massey didn't. So Rave should be getting at bats over those guys right now.
You should.
I know that a lot of people are super excited about Waters because he was really hot once they demoted MJ Melendez, but that has not continued. His numbers have nosedived since then.
Well, and I think sorry to interrupt here, but I do think that he's kind of fitting this mold of the empty batting average for the Royals, because if you go and the last road trip that they took, right, he went 7 for 20. So 350 is pretty good. Two doubles and 3 runs scored. Great. And his slash line looks pretty nice. But man, just the process is really rough to watch.
Yeah.
He doesn't get these hits when it matters most. We'd heard all about situational hitting in 2024. That message has seemingly gone out the window in the Royals dugout right now. And he's just not, I don't know. He's great from the left side. I can't stand him on the right-hand side. Don't
Yeah.
stop making this guy a switch hitter. Keep him on the left-hand side. He performs
Well, I
so
don't
much
think the
better than that.
Royals. I think the Royals would have to tell him. I think it's his choice to be the switch hitter.
I think it is too, but I think you got a coaching staff there who could say,
Yeah,
"Hey, this is what we see. Cut it out."
yeah. And I look at the, like you said, the batting averages. 280 batting average. That's pretty good in the current version of MLB. But a 317 OBP and a sub 400 slug.
Not great.
That's not going to cut it.
No. And if you want, so I know even the broadcast has loved talking about the expected numbers. You know, you talked about it with Salvi to address his early season slump. Drew Waters is outperforming all of his expected numbers. I think that's why I get so hung up on his process, because you see a guy with a 280 batting average right now. Well, Statcast sees a guy with a 250 batting average, and his
Right.
slug is even worse, going from 394 to 337.
And
It's just tough.
yeah, if you go back to the beginning of the Boston series, so May 9th, not
Mhm.
a tiny sample at this point. That's a
No.
good 2 weeks, 3 weeks almost.
Yeah.
He's batting 271, 286, 354 is his triple slash line there.
Mhm.
That's a 286 OBP is not going to get it done, especially not when you combine it with a 354 slug.
Yeah.
That's an 083 ISO. There's no power. There's no on base. He hasn't walked a single time
Yeah.
since May 6th. It's just it's killing us. And everyone's
Also,
like, well, his numbers still look good because he was really hot for a minute and they're still coming back down. Kind of like Vinny's numbers still don't look good because
right.
he was so cold for so long and his numbers are only just now coming back up.
And I do, to give Royals fans some hope out there. I wrote, I think it was about a month and a half ago at this point, that Salvador Perez was leading the league, and like, hey, his WOBA is this, his expected WOBA though is just so much higher. And right now, that is still the case. He is still leading all of baseball in the difference between his real world WOBA and his expected WOBA. And if he was meeting those expected numbers, he would be the second best batter on in this Royals lineup, only second to Bobby Witt Jr. So
Sorry, can you,
there's a little bit
who,
of
who
hope
are we
there.
talking about? I missed
Salvi.
that.
I pivoted to Salvi real quick. So sorry about that. I'm over
No,
here.
you're fine. The dog was distracting me.
Well, I was looking at it because, you know, Vinny is another guy who's underperforming his expected stats. India is. Even Biggio was, believe it or not. Overall, the Royals lineup as a whole is underperforming their expected stats. And that's not the case for very many teams out there. And I think the Royals have one of the biggest differences amongst
The
all.
problem with that argument, there's the biggest problem is that was true last year too.
Yeah.
So they kind of have a history of doing this now, and to be like, well, they'll get there eventually. But on the other hand, Royals Data Dugout had a really interesting post, kind of looking forward to the future of the Royals lineup, and basically, yeah, some of the best projection systems out there, Steamer, the Bats X, are saying, yeah, this team will be hitting league average. I would expect almost all of these hitters to be hitting league average the rest of the season.
Okay.
And if they switched from way under league average to league average, and they add a bat or two, then they'll be fine. And that's where, again, we come back to they have a winning record in May so far. They are right in the thick of the playoff hunt. It's extremely frustrating, but this isn't the end. Things could
Right.
still get much, much better from here.
Exactly. And speaking of adding that bat or two, let's go ahead and talk about one of the bats that Royals fans out there want them to add immediately in Jack Caglione. I still call him first baseman Jack Caglione. Not quite ready to give him that outfield
He's playing
label.
as much outfield as he is first base, even in Omaha.
Yeah. And in Omaha so far, it's I will believe it when I see it on a more what's it called? Consistent basis.
But again, the Royals had Kevin Biggio at designated hitter for a while. They can afford to let somebody have the designated hitter spot, whether that's Vinny or Jack. And Salvi can have entire days off. That's
Yes.
okay.
That he can. believe I need you to go tell the Royals that.
Yeah, well,
Uh, so Caglione, he made his AAA debut down there in Salt Lake City. Just was on an absolute heater. We spoke about that on the last podcast episode. Unfortunately, he went to Omaha, made his home debut against the St. Paul Saints, and that went hitless, had 3 strikeouts. But Jeremy, you pointed out to me that the process wasn't that bad. It was just a bad game in the box score.
yeah, Bobby struck out 4 times in one game over the weekend, so, it happens. I think we're looking for it because it's our fear with Jack Caglione, and the thing I saw, I didn't actually watch the at-bats, but I did check out the pitch locations and the swing choices via the Game Day app, and the first at-bat, the corners got painted against him.
Okay.
He was watching pitches, and the last pitch was it was a perfect up and in pitch to a lefty that you absolutely do not want to swing at. You pray that it's called a ball, and it was a strike. So strike 3, you're out. It happens. Now the second at bat, that was a little rough. He chased like 4 pitches well below the strike zone until he finally struck out. That happens to everybody. And then the third at bat, he watched a couple balls, took a couple swings, ended up striking out on a foul tip. So, just missed it. It's a 3 strikeout night, but it's not like he was just swinging at everything and looking ridiculous. He was still taking balls. Just the pitchers made good pitches.
Yeah, it happens. The guy is still getting used to that level of pitching. And now
Yeah.
I'll reiterate what I've said before. I still believe that the higher tier talent is in AA, which he absolutely crushed with the Naturals.
Yep.
But you are going to have more experienced pitchers there in AAA. You're going to have, former MLB vets. You're going to have guys who've been farmhands for the better part of their lifetime, things like that. And they understand picking up on players' weaknesses a little bit more, exploiting their process to get the results that favor the pitcher. So I'm not freaking out about Caglione yet. And I do think that you are onto something there because, pointing out that, oh, well, this is what we were worried about, Jack Caglione. That's why he didn't make the opening day roster, is because he was going to be strikeout heavy, yada, yada, yada. He wasn't that in AA. And one night is not going to say that he is that for Omaha and will always be that. Like you said, we don't call Bobby Witt Jr. strikeout heavy, and he has bad games.
And even with the 3 strikeout night, that gives him a 21.2 strikeout percentage in Omaha.
Good.
Which is almost identical to what he was doing in AA, which is almost identical to what he was doing in High A last season. He's strikeout about a fifth of the time. With that power, you live with it. For sure. He's still batting .290. The OBP is a little concerning in Omaha because he's only taken, I think, 1 walk so far. No, it's 2. He's got a 1 walk and an intentional walk. But, again, it's 7 games.
Yeah.
And he could have, had it been a major league umpire, he could have taken a walk instead of a strikeout last night.
Yeah, man, some of these, I feel like as the season goes along, we are seeing more and more bad umpiring, like really bad.
Maybe this is an aspect of being on the losing end. It felt like we were seeing a lot of bad umpiring early, and then the umpiring was pretty good while the Royals were winning, and now it seems bad again. So maybe I'm just biased when the Royals lose, but there were a lot of this last night. The strike zone was inconsistent, and that was to both teams, but it was inconsistent to say the least.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because I do feel like the Royals pitch and hit to the strike zone. And when you call, this has been a thing for Michael Garcia since last year. When you call a pitch 2 inches outside a strike, when it's supposed to be a ball, and he strikes out all the time on a pitch 2 inches outside the strike zone.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredibly frustrating. And that's not a bad plate appearance by Michael Garcia. That's a bad call by the umpire. Yep. That's a good plate appearance by Michael Garcia. And you could argue, well, he should swing at that because it's too close to take. But no, he shouldn't. The umpire should get the call right.
Correct. And that has always been his kryptonite. that down and away. And I get it. It usually is a batter's kryptonite, but man, it's been bad for him across his MLB career. So of course he's not
Well,
going
and
to swing
usually
at
it's a
those pitches.
kryptonite because they swing at it, but he watches them, which is what you want him to do.
Well, don't you worry. There are plenty of successors to Angel Hernandez out here
Ugh,
in MLB,
the
unfortunately.
ABS cannot come soon enough.
Yeah, I'm definitely ready for it. And I'm sorry if you're an umpire out there, I get it. Y'all have a tough job. But when you get
They
to the
do a way
highest.
better job than I would, but
Oh
I'm
yeah,
also not getting paid 3 figures to do it.
right. I think that's the point that I wanted to get at is when you get to the highest level, we have the highest expectations for you. I was talking to go
I
ahead.
also write software a lot better than they do.
Yeah.
So,
I was talking to Honey the other day about that is because I feel like why I couldn't be an umpire. I have good gauges on, left to right of the zone, right? I have a terrible gauge on north south.
yeah.
Like if it was I'm not saying I understand umpires that call these pitches that are like 4 inches below the zone, but I kind of get it because I think I would be calling those, but I also have terrible vision.
And think about how fast those balls are moving and how much they're sweeping from side to side and up and down. That's hard. I bring everything back to MLB The Show, it seems, but people throw me curveballs that end up in the dirt, and I swing at them constantly in MLB The Show because I'm just not ready for that much movement. And to look at an umpire and be like, yeah, you got to figure out whether that's a ball or a strike. Now they don't. They get a little bit longer because they get to wait till the pitch is actually in the catcher's glove before they make the call. But still, it's just rough.
It is. It is. All right, a couple of transactional things that we do need to talk about real quick. So before Wednesday's series finale, the Kansas City Royals demoted Southpaw Evan Sisk, sent him back to Omaha, and selected the contract of Andrew Hoffman, a right-handed pitcher. Now, if you don't recognize that name, I completely understand. Hoffman is a guy who kind of underperformed as a starter after coming to the Royals system in that trade alongside Drew Waters and CJ Alexander. I feel like we know what we're getting with Waters. Alexander, of course, is out of the Kansas City Royals organization, so Hoffman is that final piece to reach the bigs. I will say, in a trade for just one pick, that is still that player picked with that draft slot is still a prospect and not like a top 100 prospect or nothing. I'm sorry if you got 3 guys who reached the bigs. I feel like
Yeah,
that's
that's a
kind
good
of a good
trade.
return. Yeah.
It's a good trade. Prospects, as I say over and over again, will break your heart. Do you remember who Atlanta selected?
Yeah, they selected J.R. Ritchie, who's been having a lot of elbow problems. I mean, he's still I was looking at who was it? I think I was looking at Baseball America's prospect chat just from today actually. And someone brought up J.R. Ritchie and Baseball America considers him a fringe top 100 prospect,
Oh wow,
but still it's a lot of unrealized potential with that with injuries. I'm
and
sure
he
that
just got promoted to Double A, and he has not had a good go of it in his first 2 starts.
right. So I don't know. It's still a win in my book. But Hoffman,
You got 3 major leaguers for one possible major leaguer. Probably a good trade.
yeah. But Hoffman right now working exclusively out of the pen, especially for Omaha. Appeared in 19 games. Went 2-2, had a 2.84 ERA. Pretty good stuff. A lot of strikeout stuff. Strikes out 33% of the opposition while only walking 8% of opposing batters. Arsenal, pretty straightforward. Throws a changeup nearly 50% of the time, a four-seam fastball the other 40% of the time, averaging about 96 miles an hour, and then mixes in a pretty decent slider there every now and then. I'm not saying like he's going to be a mid leverage guy. I think he's going to be like a low leverage guy. Let's see what he can do. But this is another one of those prospects that has earned their way to the show. And so I can appreciate this more transactional nature from the Royals. What about you, Jeremy?
Yeah, so with the promotion of Andrew Hoffman, I think that's almost everyone I said the Royals could use to replace Chris Stratton has now been called up to replace Chris Stratton and others. The big thing that I want to put out there is that this says nothing about Evan Sisk's performance. This
Yeah.
is, hey, we did a bullpen game and we still have a game to play, and there's the Tigers are apparently pretty righty heavy according to our editor Max Reaper. All of their guys sound like lefties to me, but I guess I'm misremembering that. And then Javi Baez is a righty, and he's turned back into a Major League Baseball player
Yeah.
all of a sudden.
Crazy.
But yeah, so this is not about Evan Sisk's performance. This is just we need another reliever. Evan Sisk threw back-to-back days. He wasn't going to be available today anyway. And then Seth Lugo probably going to get activated off of the injured list this weekend. So somebody's going to have to go down. So you call up Hoffman. Maybe he gets into the game today, depending on how things go. Probably only if it's a blowout one way or the other. And then you demote him to call up Lugo.
Yeah.
And that's how that works.
It's just business. I remember years ago criticizing how the Royals handled Edward Olivares.
Yeah.
Do you remember those years where he was
Yes.
just up and down all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of seems like Sisk is on that same trajectory for this
That's
season.
very normal for relievers who still have
Yeah,
options, though, is
yeah,
to call them up and down to fill in for. And what'll happen is somebody will get worn out on Hel Zerpa or Jonathan Bolin, and they'll demote them and call up Sisk. That's just the way it goes.
yeah. That's this is just business, and I thank you for clarifying about Sisk because even outside of that performance yesterday against the Reds, I've liked what we've seen from Sisk this season. I really have.
Well, the last two games are the first time I got to really watch him, and his arm action is nasty,
It is.
especially for left-handers, but even for right-handers. There's a lot of deception to that delivery. As the broadcast kept saying, it looks like it's coming from second base. When a guy is that far from a normal release point, it can be really hard to pick up the baseball, and you could see it in a lot of their swings. Now, after he'd thrown however many pitches he threw in the 2 innings Monday, he didn't quite have the sharpness when he came out to pitch Tuesday. He also got a little squeezed. So it is what it is. He'll be back. Don't stress about him too much. I would imagine that by the end of the year, he's a fixture on the roster because he's basically being called up and demoted right now because he's the worst of the relievers, and he's good. That's the great news, is that this is a factor of the team has a really good bullpen. If this was 2023 Royals, he would be pitching in the 8th inning right now.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. No, shoot, he might even be pitching in the 8th inning for the opening half or opening season of the 2024 Royals. Frankly,
Can I
go ahead.
take this moment, speaking of the bullpen,
Yeah,
I just want to shout out Carlos Estevez and manager Matt Quatrero. He has looked unhittable his last couple of times out there. He and Quatrero were taking a lot of flack for him still having the closing role when Urseg was pitching as well as he was. Well, Urseg's given up a couple home runs now, and Estevez has finally found his groove. So they're both really good relievers. It does, as I was saying before, it doesn't matter which one of them closes because they're both really good.
exactly. Fourth most saves in Major League Baseball, second most in the American League.
Which is a factor of the Royals winning a lot of games and winning a lot of close games.
Yep, thankful for that. All right. A couple more injury things that we do need to keep track of. Cole Reagans and Seth Lugo. So you brought up Lugo. Should be back for this weekend against the Detroit Tigers. So if you weren't aware, Thursday is off day for the Royals, and then they host the Detroit Tigers Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then they have off next Monday. So Lugo should be back, progressing well, according to Andy Rogers. Cole Reagans, on the other hand, he's scheduled for another bullpen today. So we'll see what the result is from that. But he likely needs a rehab start before he comes back to Kansas City. So he might be a little bit more delayed, early June in that time frame.
As long as we have one of them, we don't have to have bullpen games.
Yeah, I
And
think
it
that's the big
gives, as I noted earlier, it gives Noah Cameron one more start to really cement himself as I should be the guy in the rotation when Reagans comes back, not Lorenzen.
So I'm going a little off tangent here. I love Noah Cameron. I really do. I love what we have seen from him so far. I think tonight is probably his. I think I've said this about his last two starts, but I think tonight is like his biggest test. You have a red hot Reds
Well,
lineup in
as
your
as I mentioned last year, when you pass your test, your reward is getting another test. Last year we kept saying the next series is really big for the Royals. They passed that test. The next series is really big for the Royals. They passed that test. And that's Noah Cameron. The next start is a really big test for Noah Cameron. Well, that's because the first 3 he passed.
Yeah. So you said, Seth Lugo comes up, Hoffman's probably the guy to go down. Let's say Cameron sticks in the rotation and Lorenzen gets pushed to the bullpen. Who do you think gets pushed back to
Jonathan
Omaha?
Bolin.
You think Bolin gets pushed back to Omaha? That makes the most sense. I'm kind of scared that they would do Steven Cruz.
And they won't do. Steven Cruz has been getting leverage innings. He's not going anywhere.
I
then
hope.
The next guy, if Hunter Harvey ever gets healthy again, what a disappointment. Because he looked so good this year. But if he ever gets healthy again, the next guy I think would be Serpa.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So we'll see what happens there. But I think that you're on the right track there, because they're not going to DFA Taylor Clark. Clark has been
He's
nails.
been good.
He's been nails this year. He really has. So
it would be stupid to cut him.
It would. I can't believe we're saying that in 2025, but that is the reality of it. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that we could pontificate about here on the podcast, but if there's any other topic that you want, make sure you leave something down in the comments on Spotify, or you can reach out to us on social media. Royals Review, that comment section. I'm sorry, Jeremy, I am no better than any other man. I will go through that comment section sometimes and try to find story topics. It's like, oh, well, this is interesting, or it's interesting that fans are thinking of this,
That's not even cheating. That's just giving the people what they want, Jacob.
Yeah, we're all about people here. All right. Do you have anything else on the Royals front?
Yeah, I had one more thought, but I lost it.
Was it about a starter?
What's that?
Was it about a starter? Was it about a relief?
I don't know.
Boo.
I was like, no, there's this one more thing I have to tell Jacob before he takes us to the reviews. And then you asked me, do you have anything else? And then it was gone.
Very dust. So, all right, let's go ahead and get to reviews. Caius, do you mind starting?
I remembered. I really, really want Cam Devaney and Taylor Clark to be on the team at the same time, because the Royals traded Taylor Clark for Cam Devaney.
Yep.
And then it's like, you won that trade, baby.
Yeah, exactly. It would just be a great full circle moment.
Stupid, but I really want it. Kind of like I wanted the Chiefs to sign wide receiver Hunter Renfroe when the Royals signed outfielder Hunter Renfroe, even though I didn't want either of them by themselves. Both of them together, both of the Hunter Renfroes sounded like a good time. I want stupid things sometimes, Jake.
Yes, stupid fact that I meant to point out.
Taylor Clark is married to Taylor Clark?
No. Wait, is that true?
I can't get over that. That's true.
Really?
His wife's name is Taylor.
Well, that's weird. That's a little weird.
I could absolutely not date someone named Jeremy, gender regardless. I could not date someone named Jeremy. That's just too weird. Yeah, could you date someone named Jacob, do you think?
No. First off, never ran into a female named Jacob before.
But if you did,
I think I would. It's just my opinion.
It's just, there's this thing I always hear, this idea that if you met your alternate self from another dimension, you would either have to fight or another F word. And I'm just like, can I not just like chill and play some video games and talk some why are those the only 2 options? But along those same lines, I absolutely could not date someone with the same name as me. That's just too weird.
It is. The random Royals stat that I wanted to point out is Hunter Renfroe's expected WOBA is better than Freddie Fermin's, Michael Massey, Kyle Isbell, and MJ Morales.
Checks out.
Yeah, it does. But like most of the Royals lineup, he was also one of those guys who is really underperforming, and that's just the reality of it. All right, so let's see. Do you mind go ahead and start us off on reviews?
Sure. So the first thing I'll recommend Royals Data Dugout again. They've got some great stuff over there. They talk with their community. It's another newsletter I'm very happy to follow, along with Lesky's Inside the Crown and Craig Brown's Into the Fountains. So check them out. But the review I wanted to give you today was Venom: The Last Dance. I finally watched that last weekend. I loved the first 2 Venom movies. I heard this one wasn't as good, but I watched it and I felt like it had a very similar tone to the first 2 movies and was equal in quality. I enjoyed it quite a bit. The ending wasn't quite what I hope for, but also, like, I don't think that that has to be the true ending. I think things can be okay, and we don't need to be all down about it, but it was good. I enjoyed it a lot.
Okay.
With tomorrow being an off day, I do have maybe some time to watch another movie tomorrow, so if anyone's got any recommendations for me or recommendations of slice of life anime, hit me up on Blue Sky or in the comments cuz I could really use some recommendations.
There you go. Thank you very much. Hey, I got a quick one before I'm going to pass it off to Honey for a guest review today. I link him all the time when I do the rumblings. Lance Brozdowski.
Yeah.
That's how you say his last name. I found him because he used to work for Driveline and I was seeing some of his social media stuff. I found his YouTube, I found his Substack, and frankly, I think he has the second best pitching related content out there, second only to Pitching Ninja. He knows what he's talking about. He's been on MLB Network a bunch of times. He's a regular guy on Marquee Sports Network who runs things for Chicago. I really love his stuff. He explains things at a very approachable level. So don't get too overwhelmed with some of the stats. Lance is a really smart guy and knows how to communicate pitching stuff well. So go check out his YouTube. I'll share like his most recent tweet on our social media. So go follow us and you can see it there. All right, let me pass it off to Honey real quick and we'll see what they have.
I am reviewing a book that I read for book club this week. It's called The Bog Wife. It is a horror novel.
Ugh.
Not horror in the way that you think, like gothic horror literature.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so let me read you this book description. I actually feel like you would like this book. In this atmospheric Appalachian Gothic, the Hadley siblings of West Virginia must unearth long buried secrets to carve out a future when the supernatural bargain entwining their fate with their ancestral land is suddenly ruptured. Since time immemorial, the Hadley family has tended the cranberry bog. In exchange, the bog sustains them. The staunch seasons of their lives are governed by a strict covenant that is renewed each generation with the ritual sacrifice of their patriarch, and in return, the bog produces a bog wife. Brought to life from vegetation, this woman is meant to carry on the family line. But when the bog fails or refuses to honor the bargain, the Hadsleys, a group of discordant siblings, still grieving the mother who mysteriously disappeared years earlier, face an unknown future. Middle child Wenna, summoned back to the dilapidated family manor just as her marriage is collapsing, believes the Hadsleys must abandon their patrimony. Her siblings are not so easily persuaded. Eldest daughter Edda, de facto head of the household, seeks to salvage the compact by desecrating it. Younger son Percy retreats into the wilderness in a dangerous bid to summon his own bog wife. And as youngest daughter Nora takes desperate measures to keep her warring siblings together, fledgling patriarch Charlie uncovers a disturbing secret that casts doubt over everything the family has ever believed about itself. Brimming with aching loss and the universal struggle between honoring family commitment and the drive to strike out on one's own, the bog wife is a haunting invocation of the arcane power of the habits and habitats. Yeah, so this is a really interesting read. It does incorporate a lot of elements of Southern Gothic literature. It's received a lot of praise for the exploration of patriarchal family dynamics and traditions, but it just kind of really, it's kind of, I can't say that on this or he's going to have to mark it explicit. Anyway, it twists your mind around and you kind of like don't know what's coming next. It's really good in terms of the style of Gothic literature where you're kind of like, this is mildly creepy and I'm not sure what the twist is going to be, but I know that I don't like how this feels. And it's just kind of like that the whole book. And then at the end you're like, I kind of like books that leave things not really neat and tidy and make you think and figure out how you felt about them.
That doesn't sound like a thing for me at all.
I think you would like it if you gave it a shot.
You think something weird. I don't know what you think my taste is, but it's
But
not
it
that.
is also she writes really beautifully about their relationship with the land. And just as someone who's very sensitive to nature, being able she writes really beautifully about the way that you can kind of sense nature and like this idea of that people have of talking to trees and being in commune with nature around you. So I think it's really beautiful. Anyway, it came out in 2024. It's called The Bog Wife. It's by Kay Chronister, and I highly recommend you check it out.
Cool.
And
I'm not gonna, but I appreciate the recommendation.
well, that's okay. I'm going to make Jacob read it. And
There
I'm
you go.
supposed to do the outro. So
That's what husbands are for.
how does he do it? I don't remember, and I'm high.
Until next time.
There we go. Until next time, go Phillies! Bye.
What?
I'm kidding. Go Royals! Go Royals!